Can we go around and do introductions? Because, wow. I am the voice of God. I am the great and powerful Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. Can we actually go around and do introductions? Because just if I was, is there any way that we don't have to have that on? They can hear me. Can we turn it down so that we can just sit here and... It's okay. No, it's fine. We'll go. We'll just leave this on. Sorry, guys. We'll have to just do. We're just going to do the voice of God. Can you start? Actually, you know what? I can make her start because she's a friend. So ha. You have to go first.
My name is Lisa Vershan. I teach math and I'm the technology coordinator for upper school. I teach at an independent PrePost school, but I'm just in the upper school and I'm a little bit outside of DC.
I'm Marcel DeMeo. I trained to be a filmmaker and taught film, video, and English for most of my teaching career, secondary, post-secondary, middle school, and now I'm in administration. So I'm principal of K-8 private Catholic school in Jacksonville.
That's awesome.
Where we do a lot of media, a lot of filmmaking.
I'm seeing like a general theme here. This is great. Like digital literacy, apparently media specialists. That's who cares. Okay.
And I am a digital learning coach and former media specialist. And I work with all the schools.
Wow.
Only one.
Which is how many schools?
We're
11 schools. Okay, awesome.
My name is Della Smith and I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, working at a small independent school there, project-based school, 4th grade teacher, and always trying to implement whatever kind of fun media things I can with the kids.
Awesome.
Follow their inspiration.
These are inspirational people. We're gonna talk more about this.
I'm Tara Williams. I'm from Florida State University Schools. I am the digital education teacher for K-6. So I'm just really...
So good. I'll work on it.
Or I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's...
I'm Nicole Morris. I'm the 6'8" library media specialist at Greenville Middle School in Greenville, Tennessee. I also have some part-time teacher coaching and mentoring position I do as well.
Awesome.
My name is Shannon McCarthy. I'm like 10 minutes from here at St. John Vianney Catholic School, and former special ed teacher turned computer lab teacher, and then we're looking to change that more into like a coach type integration thing next year. So
Research teacher.
yeah.
That's what
Slash
Catholic schools are calling it now.
intervention coach
Right.
slash you know
Research person.
yeah.
The name is constantly
Evolving.
Right.
The standards
Yeah, so
constantly
give me some
confusing.
ideas.
Yeah,
I can
that's-
take to my principal.
Yeah, it's a hard thing what the title sort of for this kind of position is. I like every time I talk, everyone else instantly. I am the voice of God.
I'll give you just a little example. I thought that you'd enjoy this just based on your sensibility in moving to this. Our district decided that we were going to go to skills-based report cards,
Okay.
whether we liked it or not. So we gritted our teeth, we skirted, and we decided to go all in. And when we got those skills-based report cards, there were some skills that were not really skills in some of the primary content areas. And when I looked at what the media skills were that we were going to go out and give a ranking, they were conduct and participation.
That's the two media skills?
That's all that was there.
Oh, this is great.
And I just went, are you kidding me?
Well, now we know, I mean, you know, that's what media is going to be.
in our district where skills-based report cards and library media ranks and applied arts and that.
We don't even have that anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Computer
such
and
a,
library are just gone off completely.
it's so interesting, right? Because,
be
I mean, exactly, like the Common Core said, hey, you know, we're going to try and integrate this through the whole thing. But whether that's actually showing up in the data, I think it's a good thing that we want to integrate it into our whole curriculum, but I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the data that suggests that maybe we need to rethink some of this. So let's talk it through. So my name is Matt Wallaert. I'm a behavioral psychologist at Microsoft.
Okay, right there. Really only the 21st century.
So I...
Dog psychologist at Microsoft is about equal to that.
Yeah, no. So I'm a social psychologist. That's what my degree is in. I built and sold 2 startups before Microsoft, and before that was in academia. I also have a teaching degree. So I taught 8th grade social studies and mixed age ELL, which is my one true love. It's a good title.
Very cool, but it's like, really? With Microsoft?
Yeah, well, Microsoft, so, you know, it's a big company. We have a lot of research folks. And so one of the things that I'm known for in sort of education is I created our Bing in the Classroom program. And so what Bing in the Classroom is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it because it's where today's data kind of comes from, it's a free program. So school districts sign up. It's done at the district, or for private schools, it's done at the school level. They sign up, and basically we say, for all of the queries that come out of that district, they'll be ad-free, safe, and private. So we remove all the ads from the search engine. We filter out adult content automatically so the kids can't turn it off. And then we block the creation of ad profiles on our side. Because of that, we now can measure the number of searches coming from various schools and districts, which we've never been able to do before, right? Before they were just lumped in with the general population of search. Now we've got about 7 million kids that use Bing in the Classroom every day, and so we can actually look at this data. Now again, the unit of analysis here is the district or school. It's not a kid. And I don't do content analysis, so I can't tell you what they're searching for. The things I look for is actually number of searches. So what we do generally, you're going to hear me talk a lot about QPS, queries per student. So the general unit I look at is I say, okay, your school has 1,000 kids, and there was 1,000 searches today, so your QPS is 1. And we sort of look at it that way. And so what you can do, because you end up with this naturalistic experiment, because they all have different demographic variables. So I have districts like New York City, where I've just got, you know, a huge giant district, to smaller districts that have, you know, 10, 11 schools, to districts that have a school or 2, more like where I'm from originally. So
Variable technology resources too.
And yes, and unfortunately, there's not a good data source for that, right? The government doesn't do an amazing job of tracking things like how many computers does your school have. Like, that's not really reported on some of the surveys they're doing. So I'm limited by the data. So what we've actually done is I've taken this data over here from our search side and matched it up with data from the Department of Educational Statistics. So we looked at the Educational Statistics Department and all the surveys they do, matched it up with our data on a district and school level, and then started just poking at it to see what it told us. So about 7 million kids are represented. It's at the unit of analysis is a district or school level, and we mostly are thinking about sort of number of queries generated. Now, one of the first things we looked at is number of queries generated some sort of a valid predictor of what we would think of as digital literacy? Hard to tell, but we do know that the number of queries that come out of a district are correlated with other things like document creation. So we can match it up against like Office 365 data and say districts that have a lot of queries also are creating a bunch of documents. They're spending more time in Office 365. We can look at a bunch of usage measures, and those are correlated. So QPS seems to be a pretty decent measure for kind of overall computer literacy. So 2 different kinds of analysis we're doing. The first one is just correlational analysis. So we're essentially saying, you know, school A has a QPS of 1, school B has a QPS of 2. What is the difference between these schools that makes these differences? And there's some surprising things that kind of come out. So one of the things that comes out is poverty really, really matters. So the percentage of kids that you have that are eligible for free or reduced school lunches, significant impact on the number of queries that come out of that district. So the more poverty we see, dramatically fewer queries. And you're going to see this emerge as a theme. The number one thing that I can find kind of coming out of today is that resources are ruling the game. You know, the amount of, please pull yourself, you don't have to sit back, pull yourself up. Please pull into the round, and you have to introduce yourself. They gave me this giant room at the end of the day. No one wants to come to my actual talk. They're like, behavioral scientists, I don't know what that is. Data. Yeah, exactly. Soon we're drinking. There were a lot of 420 jokes at the beginning of the session. Can you introduce yourself for us?
I'm Sarah Van Gemert. I'm from Collier County.
And what are you a media specialist, teacher?
Technology specialist on
Perfect.
the data and assessment side.
Awesome. So one of the things we know poverty matters. Now, there's two things that could be going on here. One, they're not getting digital literacy at home, and so they're not bringing it with them to school. The other potential is that the school itself has fewer resources. It looks like both of those are true. So we do have data that talks about the amount of money spent per student. It's a little bit of an imperfect measure, right? Because we know there are economies of scale, right? Big districts, you get to spend little smaller amounts of money to deliver the same services to students because you can do it at scale. Whereas a smaller district, you don't get those same economies of scale. Even that said, it seems to be that kids, even when their school has adequate resources, if they're impoverished at home, that's translating into school. What that means for us, right, as folks who are caring about digital literacy, is that we have to address the home environment. We have to go, there are Verizon and Comcast and all of these folks have programs that you can get high-speed internet. If you qualify for free and reduced lunch, you can get high-speed internet for $10, $15 a month. We have to drive awareness of that with our students and our parents. If we don't, we have to drive that awareness with home, because the problem is they don't know, and we know that's bleeding over into the classroom, right? Even if we do our jobs, if we can't get those resources at home, that's a big problem. So that's one of the things that's come out of the data. We know that there's some other resource-associated things that sort of unsurprisingly drive up QPS. QPS, by the way, is queries per student. The data set that we're using has the ability to look at a district level, how many searches are kids doing, and that seems to be a decent proxy for digital literacy. The lower your student-teacher ratio, so the more teachers you have in classrooms, the more queries you see. Now, not everybody, that surprised some people. Some people's theory was, hey, when there's fewer teachers around, kids are going to be reliant more on the technology. That is not the case, right? Kids search more when teachers are pushing them to search and helping them do those searches, right, in a constructive way. So, great argument to districts to sort of say, like, teachers are a huge important part of this. It's not just about throwing tablets and computers at kids. One of the things that matters, and I thought specifically of you when you said you used to be a special ed teacher, and I'm still trying to tease this apart, the more IEPs in a district, the more searches we see. Yes, so the more kids are getting individual attention at an educational level, the more queries they're actually seeing come out of the district. Now, there are some things that people thought would matter that don't. There is, for example, no evidence that ELL percentages change your number of queries. There were a lot of folks who were like, oh, kids who don't speak English won't be querying. Not true. If anything, we see a mild correlation where the more kids that you have that are ELL, which are English language learners, okay, are ELL, the more queries you actually see. So it doesn't seem to be that's a variable. It doesn't seem like race is a variable. Overwhelmingly, poverty is the variable, right? Now, poverty and race are correlated, but if you throw them in an analysis together, race falls away. It's poverty, pure poverty, that's driving digital literacy. Another thing that was kind of interesting, gender actually emerged as a factor, but not in the way that we would expect. Girls are doing more searches than boys, not less. It's okay. I'm telling you, it's all right. Well, this is the good direction, right? Now, like as Stacy knows, it's a couple. I have a theory, and again, we want to be careful about the inferences that we're drawing from the data, right? Really, what this says is we have to go look closer. I have a theory. As Stacy sort of knows, sort of gender equity is a big thing for me in my life. It's something I work on very hard, and have a bunch of side projects related to. We know girls are not going into STEM fields at the same rate. They're not going into STEM, like college degrees at the same rate. So it may be that search is seen as sort of a outside of science, right? So technology and science may actually be emerging as separate things. Oh, I'm a girl, so I'm not good at math, but search the web, like all of these things, right? Could be viewed as an LA school. So that's one potential thing. I have another theory, and it actually has to do with development and the way that girls develop faster. We all know every psych thing about girls sort of developing maturity faster. One of the things that really emerged from the data that is really actually kind of concerning to me is we don't see a smooth curve of digital literacy development, right? So it's not like, hey, second graders are doing more than first, third are doing more than second, fourth are doing more than third. We're not seeing that. What I'm seeing is epoch changes. that have more to do, I think, with environment than anything else. So 4th graders and 1st graders are doing essentially the same number of searches. Then they go to middle school, huge spike, right? But 5th graders and 8th graders doing about the same number of searches. Then they go to high school, huge spike again. But 9th graders and 12th graders doing about the same number of searches. Now what that signals to me is that it's about environment, right? 1st through 4th graders, there's no unstructured lab time, right? You're with a teacher, that's when you're using computers, it's about that environment. Then you go to middle school and there's still a teacher around, but like it's a structured lab time. So you get this big bump, but you don't see, hey, like 8th graders are getting more than 5th graders. Then they go to high school, the restrictions are off, we let them access the computers kind of whenever they want, you get that next big spike, but they're not being supported in the classroom. So that we're not seeing the like, what I would love to see, I would have loved to have seen that step function, right? Where like 12th graders are doing a little more than 11th graders are doing a little more than 10th graders. So that's to me really concerning. I think it points to what might be happening with gender, right? It might just be that the girls are sort of getting, you know, into a mature place where they're seeking out these resources slightly earlier than boys. But I think that that step function, go home and draw that for your district, right? There is no more compelling argument, I think, for, hey, teachers, like you can't just say, hey, media specialists or tech specialists, like tech's over there, because clearly that's not working, right? All that gets us is this epoch change, right? When they're in my lab, they get stuff, but like they have the same labs at 5th grade that they do at 8th grade, and that's it. It has to get more integrated. So there's a second kind of analysis we can do, and that's pre-post analysis. So up to now, I've kind of been relying a little bit on like, school A did this, school B did this, what's the difference between the two schools? What we're doing now is we're saying school at time A, before the program got implemented, and school at time B. So we're actually doing a within subjects comparison. And what it turns out is that environment is hugely important. So when you make, so there's 3 big parts to bring in the classroom. And again, this is not to tout a Microsoft program, it's just because of the data set, it's what we know. One part is to add free, safe, private search. There are these daily digital literacy lesson plans. How many people have you all gone to Bing at least once in your life? So big, beautiful homepage every day. If you hit that little info button, it takes you, there is a lesson plans link. And we have this giant archive of lesson plans. So we do a K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12 digital literacy lesson plan associated with every single school day's image. So every Monday through Friday, all year round. And we keep them in an archive. So there's about 1,000 lessons out there. There's also a lesson template so you can create your own. So there's this add free, safe, private search part. There's this lesson plan part. Then there's a third part, which I'm mostly going to leave aside today, which is actually about helping the school earn tablets. We don't have a ton of really good data there, so I'm going to leave it aside today. A year from now, I might have some better data for you. So some districts are really pushing the lesson plans. They're pushing their teachers to make digital literacy, the lesson plans are designed, they're not full class lesson plans, they're like, it's a 5-minute warm-up activity kind of thing. And yeah, they're mini lesson, they're an activity, they take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and they're really designed to do what we call authentic inquiry. So what we were seeing when we looked at the search logs is kids basically just copy questions off worksheets, put them into Google, get an answer, spit back out the answer.
Is that the way to teach them to search?
Yeah, so well, it's actually to teach them to view search as a tool for authentic inquiry. So here's what I mean by that. Rather than, we ask a question that search can't answer. So here's the example I always use. Imagine the picture of the day is a volcano in the South Pacific. We might ask kids, if this volcano erupted, would the nearest town be safe? So you can't go plug that into Google, right? Nothing's going to... They will, and nothing will come back. And so what we then do is break it up into 5 sub-questions. And each group, so one group is looking at a map and saying, okay, the volcano is this far away from the nearest town. So they're practicing map skills. Another group is looking at, like, what's the explosive radius of a volcano? When a volcano erupts, like, how far away are things affected? Then they come back together to answer that macro question. So the idea is, how do you use search to answer these larger, more authentic sort of curiosity-based questions? So some schools are just using ad free, safe, private. Some schools are also integrating these lesson plans. And so we have kind of a natural A-B. So it turns out, just by turning on ad free, safe, and private, you see about 4x the number of queries. So just making teachers feel like, hey, we're going to take care of adult content, like it's going to be private and safe, they're much more willing to use it in their environment. I mean, 400% returns on searches, there's no program I could implement that we would like, that we can increase kids' search that much. When they add the lesson plans, there's a further 3x. So by creating a safe environment and then saying, all right, we're going to like make this a core part of our curriculum, you can see a 700% increase in searches just from those two things. So that to me really indicates where we all have to be concentrating is environment. How do we make teachers feel like using search is going to be, using technology is going to be easy and simple in your classroom, it's going to be safe, your kids aren't going to get off into bad things, right? It's, in psychology, we talk about promoting pressures, reasons to do something, and inhibiting pressures, reasons not to do something. If there's anything I'm convinced of out of this data set, it is that the majority of what we have to focus on is inhibiting pressures. Kids want to search. They are curious. Teachers want to give them that promoting pressure. The problem is access to resources, access to labs, worrying that my kids are going to get into adult content, worrying that they're not going to learn the right kind of things. It's all these negative pressures that I think we as sort of learning specialists have to go and remove. So that's some of the data. I know lots more. So if you have specific questions about like, did X matter? I can tell you more about that. But I'd rather just, one of the things that I think is really important is that we as digital learning specialists learn to come back and talk about this data specifically with people, because we ended up in this battle so often where I'm having you have a conversation with an administrator and you're like basically pitting your beliefs against theirs, right? They're just like, no, I don't agree with that, right? It's about their belief system. So if you can come in armed with data and you can say, hey, you know what? Like, here's the number of searches that we did as a district last week, and we implemented this new program, and here's the number of searches we did this week. Like, that's unarguable, right? Right? It's not about beliefs, now it's about data. So I think we have been a little bit scared to talk about data as teachers and as learning specialists because we feel like it's reductive and it quantifies kids and, it's tied up with testing, which we're not very happy about. Like, it has all these negative quantitative aspects, but it can be such a powerful tool for discussing this topic with our administrators and getting the resources that we need. Does that make some sense?
To make sure we use the other language while doing that discussion.
Right.
Like I'm just imagining the language you're using now. As educators, we're interpreting all of that, meaning that they're having inquiry-based questions. And,
right.
But we've got to make sure to be using that language, because I know at my school that's what they're afraid of.
Right.
Is are we losing, the project-based
nature of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, and technology can feel that way, right? Because it feels like, oh, you just type things into Google and it spits back an answer. It's like calculators, right? But, Stacy, who's a math teacher, like, calculators are great, right? Calculators, like, allow kids to take on these much more authentic curiosity, project-based, experiences that are more authentic to how they're going to use math in the world.
There's a divide between teachers who are comfortable making that departure
Mm-hmm.
and their own confidence and their own technology skills,
Right.
whether digital natives or not. You said something huge when you talked about how educators feel the pressures of their own environment. And from the administrative down perspective, I wish I had a better way of helping my teacher set feel confident, more able to take risks,
Mm-hmm.
feel a better sense of play, a better sense of experimental learning.
We have the absolute
Not to be
opposite.
tied to the outcome, not being afraid of losing their jobs.
Sure.
That, really heavy stuff like, oh my God, you're giving me an iPad, I don't want that.
Oh my gosh, we're the opposite. We are like, please give us these tools. Let us have access to this. We can do this, this, and this. And the IT department's like, no,
No.
because it opens up too much.
Yeah, so I think that I have been at schools where I've seen both of these sort of issues. And again, I go back to the sort of promoting, inhibiting pressure problem, right? If you can convince them that an environment is safe, they're much more willing to take risks, right? If you can say to them, hey, you know what? We've got this ad-free, safe, private search. We've got these tools that you can't screw up. Like,
I literally say to my kids, if you can get to it, it's yours. Right?
Locked it down.
right.
If you can get to it,
Right.
Was that it? That's what I mean. Ours is so tight.
And that's what we really see. I see things at either kind of two ends. I see things at the end where the tech department is the one driving the fear, right? And so everything is so locked down, and it's about going to your tech department and saying, hey, you know what? When you do X, we see X, right? I mean, we've all argued with tech people before.
Like my tech department would say, so that increases the searches by 700%. Okay, now there's 700% more chance that they're going to get into something they shouldn't.
Or traffic, or just,
Traffic, yeah, exactly.
The whole
Right.
bandwidth.
I think it's more just exposure because we're a K through 12 school.
Yep.
So I mean, we're not just dealing with high schoolers, we're dealing with kindergartners, and we're dealing with,
Our school doesn't have any filter at all. And it's
crazy.
18 months to 5th grade. And we've chosen that. And we're trying to teach digital responsibility. And I tell the kids every time they get on, if there's anything that comes on that you don't want to see, turn off your monitor, or quickly go back.
Right. Here's the back key.
You have a constituency that bought into that.
Yes.
You have a parent set that's going
As a
and
parent.
wants that because it's a project-based
Yeah.
school.
If I put my parent hat on, I mean, at home, we have our kids locked down, and my 8th grader gets so frustrated. Mom, why do you have this locked down? And I'm like, because then you have to hand me your phone, and I have to put my little code in, and it's my way of immediately monitoring what you're doing, because in the classroom, I'm walking, but my 8th grader is walking down the street with her phone, and I'm not monitoring.
And that's why we made the decision, is because we knew that at home they probably aren't filtered either.
Right. It is surprising
And that
how
they will come
crazy.
across
Yeah.
it, and we wanted to teach them what to do when they come across it.
Right.
Like that.
And I think it's a very, I mean, I hear this dichotomy play out in schools all the time. I mean, and I really do think, there is a culture of fear around this, and I think we do have to sort of say, what is the right level of filtering? When does that turn off? Like, this is and we face this at Bing all the time, right? Educational nudity. Educational nudity. Like, should we block the Venus de Milo? And there are constituencies in the United States that would say yes, and there are constituencies in the United States that would say no.
Cartoon anatomy book.
Exactly. So what Bing in the Classroom does is we err on the side of permissive. So we basically, if you want to see a girl in a bikini, knock yourself out. Like, what we're trying to prevent is what we call leakage, right? So leakage is, it sounds bad. It's a terrible term. But like, I put in girl on bike, right? And I'm thinking girl on a bike, and instead what I get is like girls in bikinis on Harley Davidsons, right? We're trying to prevent that kind of adult leakage.
Something is innocuous as pregnancy, and you get,
Very different things.
pregnant women.
Right, very different kinds of
I've
things.
done that. Like, I remember in the beginning, those kinds of things. I was
Right.
like, I didn't ask for that. Whoa.
Right.
So
it's something
as
that,
an adult, it's offensive.
and so I think that, again, you want to create programs that allow your teachers to feel like some personal responsibility, some safeguards, but again, it is this access piece. I don't think we have to push teachers very hard to want to be curious. What we have to do is make it safe enough for them to express that curiosity and to take these risks. And whether that's structured lesson plans that come from us that are pre-vetted to come up with pretty good searches, and we know that they work and they're all Common Core aligned. They're all Common Core aligned. So if you go to the Bing homepage, and in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little info button.
Well, ours is set to that, and I'm like, I never knew that's what all those pictures were.
Google, we adopted Bing.
Info, and then do you see right underneath, there's a little blue link that says lesson plans.
A little info thing.
Let's see here.
Yeah.
Here. Oh yeah, so hit the info button. Oh, this is on a touch device. Sorry. You people and your iPads.
This is what.
Yes, you also can.
I would like to vacation here.
No worries. Why
Educaternetwork.com search.
are you not getting? I don't know why you don't get this on an iPad. Should look into that.
Because you guys didn't make it.
Well, don't blame, exactly, because they don't let me do things. So here you go. This is so if you just go to educaternetwork.search.bing, you'll get the full
It's not touch, sorry.
Sorry, it's so weird how quickly you like adapt to, by like my Surface Pro 3, I'm so used to using touch. .com/search. Yeah, you can use anything you want. Yeah, you can use anything you want. And so this will give you the K through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12 lessons, as well as a lesson plan, because we're actually encouraging kids to create their own. Yeah, everything here's just not, yeah. It's a little slow. Yeah, I'm, you know, again, I don't want to talk too much about the program. You know, this is not a Microsoft session, right? This is really about the data. And I think that the data suggests to us that what you want to try and do is think explicitly about, hey, how do I give people some like promoting, why do I give some reasons to search in the first place? And then how do I get out of their way, right? How do I make them feel like it's something that they can do in a safe, secure, like positive way? Does that make sense?
And you know, one of the philosophies that we have, because we're totally behind in technology at our school, and the main thing.
And yet, so far ahead on project-based learning. Really, I was like, you're very progressive. How are you?
I mean, maybe,
It might be because the tools aren't
maybe
there.
the philosophy is first, but as far as actual, the wisdom that teachers have for implementing technology is not there. And as a team, we've just decided, let's let our students teach us, and that's our philosophy. So we've started to allow fourth and fifth graders to bring their own devices, and we'll come across some idea. We'll be like, here's a website. This is supposed to be really awesome. Try it. Teach me. Figure it out together. And so we're just walking around the classroom, not knowing how to do it, and learning from them and watching them teach each other.
Right, and they have this innate desire. And so that's...
And they figure it out so much faster than if I were sitting there every evening getting ready for this lesson to teach them about how to do it.
Right. I found that just in the class that I teach is, I've set like the kindergartners loose on paint, and I was like, I have never opened paint in my life. Open it up, kids. I did it for 5 classes, and I learned so much just by, watching them.
Letting them teach you.
Yeah, letting them teach the stuff that I knew because I'm, have some skills. I was like, oh yeah, you could do this, and then they would go and they would do 6 other things off of that. So I appreciate that.
Can I go somewhere and
No, you're here.
to hear what you would say about this?
Sure. Okay.
My stakeholders don't trust you.
Don't trust me, Microsoft?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't
okay.
trust you, they don't trust Google. We say ad safe,
Ad free.
where we're like, well, we're still going to have, we're still going to have pro-abortion stuff. We're still going to have,
Right.
we're still going to have all sorts of other stuff, and nobody's going to be able to give us the level of media ecology that we want. And it's, I get a real guarded reaction, even though I know that my job is to really get critical thinking people. It's just, there's a politics of education, particularly in Catholic private education, that I wish there was a little bit more of a partnership, a little bit more of a walk down the same path.
So, there's
I don't know, you're coming from a diocese I know well too, because you live here in Orlando Diocese.
Oh, did you?
Wonder if what I'm saying resonates.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does, because my philosophy is more in line with that. When I came into the computer lab and the kids were like, we're not allowed to search anything. And I'm like, but they're like, but we do it at home. I mean, this is kindergartners that are like, we just go on Google if I was at home. And I'm like, but we can't here. And if we do, we got to go to like Britannica, like all these tools that they don't have at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it just is such a disconnect to me. So I got my principal, but she retired last year, so now I have a new one. So now we're trying to figure that out. But at least with my 7th and 8th graders, I started doing search. Like that was pretty much what I taught them last year. It was just the same kind of thing. Yeah, because Google wasn't blocked.
So I'm a super big fan. My father used to say this to me a million times as a child. You can't legislate morality, right? There's no law I can create that creates moral people. Like people don't kill people. Like you don't leap across this table and murder me because of a law, right? You don't leap, hopefully. Not making any assumptions, but people don't. We act in moral ways because of teaching, right? And so that's my sort of, when I talk with, and I'm very respectful of the fact that, I think, as I sort of pointed out with Venus Milo, I don't know the answer. Like, I don't think it's my job to decide what's obscene or not. Like, I think that's a local control issue that I think you all have to talk about yourselves. what I say sort of back to districts where I see this thing is, hey, it's not my job as a teacher to legislate morale. I will teach them the responsible search skills. We can't do that at a filter level, right? Because there's no law, right? There's no like filtering rule I can write that will produce moral results, right? That's not the way to do this. The way to do this is let the results come in and let me teach the kids. I'm a teacher, that's my job. So where I come back to sort of CTOs and places where I see these really restrictive filters and things, I sort of say, hey, look, let me do what I'm good at, right? Let me do the teaching, right? Because, you know, these filters that you set up, you know, let's get to a place we feel good and decide what we are and aren't going to be able to, like, you know, set up and go from there. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and I say it in a way that is, and I mean it genuinely, like truly respectful of the fact that that is a concern for them, and you know, people, the parents have chosen to put their kids there because they have particular moral beliefs, and
Because they can control that.
and we want to be respectful and responsible for that, but we want to do that at a teaching level, not here. And I think again, you got to remember, right? CTO staffs, like, those are hyper-logical people. You got to explain it like you explain it to an engineer, right? You got to say, I don't want to filter here, I want to filter downstream, right? They're still filtering. The filter is me, right? The filter is teaching, right? It's just downstream from the technology, right? And they can understand that. They get like, oh yes, like I can see what you know, that's why I said bring them data. And always come back to them and prove it back to them. Say like, hey, you know what? Let's try an experiment. CTOs love experiments, right? Say, hey, I tell you what, loosen up the filters for a month, and let's measure the number of queries we did last month and the number of queries we did this month. And let's show you that, hey, you know what? When you loosen up those boundaries, I'm able to produce a much higher digital literacy rate. Come back with the data.
But it's not necessarily quality. I guess that's where I'm like, how do I argue that? Yeah.
Yes, but you can say that, hey, look, we know that more queries is associated with other forms of digital literacy, more document creation, more all of these things. Like, we have good measures that tell us that QPS is a pretty... Right. So we can do, so again, as I sort of said, there's associations between sort of how long people are sort of spending engaged in a digital environment and queries. Queries is a pretty decent, you know, there... Yeah, I mean, it depends if your CTO wants to sort of go to that level of what they're measuring. It depends on the instrumentation at their site, right? And so if they're really geeky, it's a good challenge for them, right? You're like, hey, like, let's set up some analytics so that we have an analytics portal that we all agree on that, like, can help us understand how we're doing from a digital literacy perspective.
Is a more convincing gap.
Yeah.
Talk about, okay, you know, a kid's going to sit down in the lab and go to Bing, and he's going to put in Continental Congress at once and then do nothing else, versus, you know,
He's doing multiple things, yep.
and, you know, he's got multiple windows open and going to lots of different places. That time on task.
That's stuff that can be quantified. Right. Again, I think we as teachers have really ran away from quantification because we're so worried about testing and these other things. But quantification is incredibly important. I mean, we just couldn't do, like, you know, most of the science in the world involves quantification, and there's nobody at this table that tell me that they think science is bad, right? We like science. Science is a wonderful thing. It helps us progress, and part of that is our ability to quantify things. And so we need to, as teachers, I mean, this was sort of the first part of my talk that I didn't give, we have to embrace quantification as a way of showing, hey, you know what, like, search queries aren't the point, but they help us know what's going on, right? They move it away from this land of the subjective to this land that you can go to a CTO and say, hey, look, here's, like, monitor this, watch, see what happens. Let's run experiments. Let's try this. Let's have classroom A try doing these Bing in the Classroom lessons once a week. Let's have classroom B try, like, let's loosen up the filters just in this lab and see what happens in that lab, right? Because then they're your partner, right? Instead of you arguing with them, it's, hey, let's go do this experiment together, and you're kind of on the, you know, the quantification side, the analytics side, and I'm actually teaching the thing. Let's go see what happens. And we know from this data some things that seem to work. Creating a better environment, exposing kids to these things more often. Like, these things work, and that's great. I mean, knowing that things work is half the battle. How's this feeling? Are you glad you stuck around at the end of the day? We're officially done. You all have things to do. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, if there's more. You also can just all go home. QPS, queries per student. So that's what I'm looking at, because again, for lots of privacy-related reasons, I don't want to look at the individual session of a kid. What I want to look at is of the total pipe of a district. And this actually goes to the sort of bring your own device. We implemented this in a very specific way. So what we're actually doing is we're saying, we're looking at so if you go to Bing in the Classroom, or bing.com/classroom, there's basically a sign-up form. And all of your district is doing to sign up, it's completely free, is they're saying, we are this district, and here's our IP addresses, right? Here's the outbound IP addresses of our district. If you go and you try and, well, first of all, it's really easy. If you're on the school network and you go to Bing and you search and you get no ads, you're already in. You also actually, on the homepage, you get, it also say underneath, when you go to Bing, there's a big Bing logo, it'll say in the classroom underneath. In the classroom. And it's own, and so look on your homepage and it says in the classroom. So what it does is it applies to all of the traffic that comes from the school's network. So even if your kids are bringing their own devices, as long as they are on the school Wi-Fi or attached to the school hardware, they're going to get the filtered experience.
I know you're doing the analytics and you're helping us with the data sets. What's your sales team at Microsoft Education doing at the district level, trying to convince people to adopt?
To adopt Bing in the Classroom? I mean, the great thing is it's a program that sells itself because it's free, right? So like if you knew the IP addresses for your district, you could go sign your district up. Right, like any CT, like doesn't require board approval. It's the kind of thing that people can just go like get done. So the sales team can certainly, all of them know about it and have literature and blah 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 blah. And you know, I get on the phone.
Not going to IT departments and districts and saying, hey.
Sometimes they do. Just depends on the salesperson and the relationship with the district, the size of the district, a bunch of different things. But it's an easy program to implement. But again, this isn't the Bing in the Classroom session, right? My point here is it's about environment. If there's anything I've learned from this data, it's about setting up an environment in which teachers feel like the chances of a negative outcome are low, right? And if you can set up a tech environment where they feel like the chances of a negative outcome are low and you can prove that using data, you can actually see the increases. And that's the glory, right? Coming back to your board or your principal or your superintendent or your CTO or whoever it is 3 months later and saying, here's what we did, and here's the graph that shows what happened, right? There's so few times that we can do that in so many parts of education. Technology is not one of them, right? Digital literacy is one of the most measurable forms of literacy. And so by actually bringing back this data and saying, hey, this is what happens when we do these experiments, it's a great way to prove for the programs that you want. And to give yourself feedback on like, hey, I tried this kind of class, did it work, right?
I'm going to sign up mine because obviously the school level.
Right.
But if I sign up today and I get in the classroom, now I want to go in and I want to look at my 3 months or my 6 months.
So there isn't a ton of data analysis that comes back to you now. They are working on it. But your district can monitor very easily. Like any of your networking guys can tell you, hey, here's how many calls we're making to Microsoft or to Bing. Here's how many times Bing is being visited every month. And that's a great proxy. So let's all go home. I hope you all have a great time.